This is a brief review of the key concepts from Chapter 5 that deal with elasticity. There are 4 different formulas for elasticity. The first one is known as the price elasticity of demand. I'm going to put price in parentheses because it's frequently just referred to as the elasticity of demand. The second one, along that same vein, is called the price elasticity of supply. And once again, it's typically referred to as the elasticity of supply. The third one is called income elasticity. And the fourth one is called the cross price elasticity that compares a price change of 2 different goods. The formulas for the price elasticity of demand and the price elasticity of supply are essentially the same. Both in the numerator, it's a percent change in the quantity, and the denominator is a percent change in the price. The difference, of course, is for Formula 1, for the price elasticity of demand, in the numerator, it's the quantity demanded, and absolute value is used for this formula because by the law of demand, we know when price goes up, quantity demand goes down. This would give us a negative value. We put absolute value around it, we get a positive value, and the reason for this is just easy to compare numbers when there are 2 positive numbers as opposed to 2 negative numbers. For the price elasticity of supply, anytime it's the elasticity, whatever concept you're using with, if it's price elasticity, price is always in the bottom, and quantity is going to be in the numerator. But here it's quantity supplied. I put the absolute value sign there. It's actually correct to keep it because by the law of by the law of supply, if price goes up, quantity supply goes up, so the number is positive. So actually, since we're dealing with a positive relationship, we don't have to worry about using the absolute value signs, so they are not needed in this case. I'm going to stay with these 2 formulas, speak about what's called the midpoint rule on how you must go about calculating the elasticity. So for a percent change, I'm going to ignore the absolute value sign, percent change in quantity over percent change in price. Once again, this is true for either the quantity supplied or the quantity demand. For percent change, so our change in our quantity, new minus old, it's going to be in our numerator of the top fraction. The key thing is, though, now it's not just divided by the old value, as typically is done with percent change. We're going to divide by the midpoint, or the average of that quantity, and we take that, we divide, once again, percent change in price is change in price. Instead of dividing by the original price, we take the midpoint, or the average price value. It is absolute value required if you're dealing with the price elasticity of demand. It's irrelevant, not needed for the price elasticity of supply. And for both of these formulas, if the value is greater than 1, think about cross-multiplying. That would imply the change in quantity is greater than the change in price. So if quantity changes more than price, that means people are very responsive to the change in price. So therefore, this would indicate either an elastic demand or an elastic supply. If the elasticity, price elasticity of demand or supply, if it is less than 1, then this would be considered to be having an elastic demand. Sorry, an inelastic demand or an inelastic supply. This would symbolize, if you cross multiplied, the percent change in quantity demanded or supplied would be less than the percent change in the price, signaling that if price goes up, quantity only alters a small amount, therefore consumers or producers are not very responsive to that change. And if we look at a graph, if something is perfectly inelastic in demand or supply, it would have a vertical demand curve, or the same shape, a vertical supply curve. That would just mean that we have some fixed quantity, and whatever the quantity is, if consumers or suppliers do not alter their buying or production habits, they're not responsive to that change, therefore they're perfectly inelastic. Moving on to the third formula, which is the income elasticity of demand. Well, before, as I mentioned, when it's a price elasticity in our formula, the price is on the bottom. Well, this is the income elasticity. So we're going to put the percent change of income in the denominator, because we want to see when income changes, how responsive are people to that change in income as it affects their buying habits. The absolute value is not used here. Unlike the prior examples, we actually want to know the sign, because the sign is going to indicate different things. So consider option 1. If the sign is negative, less than 0, of course that occurs if the numerator and denominator have opposite signs. So for example, if income goes up and quantity goes down, well, if people have more income and they buy less, that would indicate that is an inferior good. Examples I've given, for example, taking a public bus. Let's say if you're in not a major city, if you're in a city like we are, Boca Raton, people generally speaking who take a bus, that's considered an inferior good. So if the values aren't negative, of course they're positive. So if the elasticity income value is greater than 0, actually we have two types of elastic goods. They're both normal goods, because when income goes up, people buy more, so therefore the fraction is positive, indicating a normal good. Well, there are two range of values. Suppose that it's positive, but between 0 and 1, versus if it's positive and it's greater than 1. Well, similar to the other price elasticities, if it's greater than 1, people are very responsive, so this would be considered a normal good that is elastic with respect to a change in income. If it's positive but between 0 and 1, then this one would be considered a normal good, but one that is inelastic. So you can consider thinking about a luxury good. If income goes up, people buy more, but a luxury good, people would buy maybe a lot more. So you consider a luxury good would fall more into the category, that's a luxury, sorry if you can't see that, a luxury good that falls into the category of a normal good with an elastic demand, versus a necessity where if income goes up, you only buy a little less because it's a necessity, so that would be a normal good with an income inelastic. And the last is the cross price elasticity, of demand. Once again, when you hear the word price, or if it's implied, the change in price goes in the bottom. So over 4 formulas, the price elasticity is 3 of the 4. The income, 1, the income goes in the bottom. Price elasticity, price goes in the bottom. But this is cross price. This means there are 2 different goods. So here we're looking at change in price, how it affects the change in the quantity, but it's a price of 2 different goods. So it's the price of one good, I'm going to call good A, compared to the percent change in the quantity demanded of a different good, good B. Well, those 2 goods could be perhaps substitute goods or complementary goods. So let's think. Suppose this fraction is a positive value. Well, if a fraction is positive, then they have the same sign. I'm going to assume 2 positive as opposed to 2 negatives. So if the price of good A increases, we know that the quantity demanded of good A is going to fall. People buy less of good A. Well then, what would it mean if people now bought more of good B? Well, if you buy more of a different good, good B, then it's safe to assume that those 2 goods are substitute goods. So if the cross price elasticity is positive, the goods are substitute goods. If the opposite is true, if it's a negative value, then the goods are complementary goods. Hope this helps. Please refer and review your notes.